This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Leaders, today I'm honored to have Adam Christing on the show. He is the author of The Laughter Factor, which is talking about the 5 humor tactics to link, lift, and lead. And we're going to talk today about how he got into comedy and speaking and how we can use some of these tactics when it comes to our basic communication and leadership in business today. Anyway, with all being said, Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into comedy and speaking, and why you decided to write this book.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy background. When I was 9 years old, I had an uncle who would pull coins out of my ear like a magic trick. And so I caught what magicians call the magic bug when I was really young. And then I grew up in Southern California. There's a really cool private club called the Magic Castle. And I auditioned to be a member when I was 17. And some very famous magicians like Steve Martin, all these people hang out there. And I was so nervous, John. My hand was shaking as I was trying to do my little card trick. And I was in high school. And at the end, the leader said, well, your magic's not that good, but you're funny. We're going to let you in. So growing up at that club, I got exposed to stand-up comedy, comedy magic, juggling, ventriloquism. And so I came to learn that variety, variety is not only the spice of life, it's the spice of laughter. And so what I tried to do with the book was show that every human being is also a humor being. And even if you think, well, I don't have a sense of humor, you do. It's just really finding the humor tactics, or what I call the laugh language, that fits your personality. So the book is really geared toward leaders. Doesn't mean you need to be a stand-up comedian or a professional entertainer, but you can be an orchestrator of fun, whether you're leading a small group or a large group. More than ever, people need to laugh. And it's not only great medicine, for your health. All the science and research is showing that it's really great for your heart and your brain and your stress level. But I think in business, it's also a tremendous resource for connecting with people. And if you can get comfortable with your style of humor, you can have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I found is the people that make me laugh or I think are funny are the people that I want to be around more,
That's right. That's right.
And it does help build that connection. And I was just thinking as you were talking about magic and getting started, I met Brian Saint not too long ago. I was at a show that he was putting on, and he's a really good magician, a fantastic magician. But what made his show really entertaining was the humor that was baked into it. And even if the magic wasn't that good, the humor would have made it good. But since they were both good, it was really, top-notch performance.
Well, I still do some magic, but I never really bill myself now as a magician, but more as a interactive entertainer, keynote speaker. But I love going into the audience. I was telling you earlier about the handheld microphone, because I can go into a crowd and interact with people. And this is great for your listeners to think about, is it doesn't mean you have to be up there doing a monologue. You might lead an icebreaker. Like the other day, I was with about 250 executives with Clorox, and it was a Zoom call. And we asked some questions like, hey, what was the best or worst holiday gift you ever received? And that's a simple question. But for the next 10 minutes, we were busting up because people were talking about how, my mom gave me, a potato in my stocking, and, just crazy stuff. And it wasn't like comedy club material, but it was endearing, and people open up and share. So one of the things I learned in researching the book is that if you can kind of poke some fun at yourself, I call one of the 5 humor tactics is poke. And a lot of comedians poke fun at politics, race, whatever. I encourage people to avoid that. But if you can poke fun at yourself, if you can share some of your funny flops as a leader, what happens is people go, "Oh, she's authentic," or he's like me, and you become way more approachable. So if you're ever looking for a source of humor, look right in the mirror.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Whenever you show that vulnerability of making fun of yourself, it kind of invites other people to share. I think a lot of people are kind of locked down around their leader. They don't want to say something, to go against them, but as leaders, we need people that can tell us that we're wrong. We need people to kind of keep us in check too.
And there's even a book with this title called Wired for Story. But I have noticed, like, sometimes if, say, you're giving a presentation, people people can have their clicker in their hand and it feels like you're at a lecture, and nobody really wants to be lectured. But you might be able to convey the same material in a presentation by making a story where you talk about how you flopped at your first job at a fast food restaurant, or how you got pulled over for a speeding ticket, or how your mom or dad used to discipline you as a kid. I know my mom would take, those paddles that would have the bouncy ball, like
Yeah, yeah,
ball? My mom would detach the string in the ball and use it to, spank my behind. And so I wasn't laughing at age 5, but I can laugh about it now, and it's become a fun story. So I like this a lot, John, this word intimacy. If you say it slowly, it's into me see.
yeah.
And I think when you do that as a leader or manager or team lead, what you're telling people is like, "Hey, we're all in this together." And so another fun word I have for this is what I call authenticity, where you're being real in a fun way. Now, the danger is sometimes we can just rip on ourselves. That's what I call self-defeating humor. You don't want that.
Mhm.
But if you can, take yourself down a couple of notches as a leader, what happens is your people build you back up because they're like, we like him, or she's the real deal. Or like I was saying earlier, like, for example, I was in a film in Los Angeles. I was the co-director, the co-writer. I raised the money for the movie. So of course I cast myself in the film. And when we got to the editing room, no joke, my acting was so bad, I got cut out of my own movie. And so when I tell a story like that, it's like, hey, it's people laugh, but also it's like, oh, this guy's approachable.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's also like whenever you can uh, just poke yourself, like as you're saying, and point out the flaws in yourself. That shows that you have a little bit of self awareness. You're not, you're not unapproachable, and that's obviously something that leaders need to have. What are some other tactics that we can use when it comes to leading our team? And maybe if we're not like the boss, maybe we're just a individual contributor on a
Sure.
panel of people, and we want to be able to share in a meeting, but we need to have something that kind of gives us confidence in order to do so.
Yeah, I think even in a group setting, you can stand out even if you don't feel like you're a stand-up. And one of the other tactics or laugh languages is probably my favorite of the 5 to share with people is simply surprise. And so doesn't mean you have to tell a joke or learn a magic trick, but if you can think of ways to surprise your coworkers. Like, I was recently with a bunch of wonderful IT people, and this one guy, people were wearing tuxedos, and he had this hat, and he just kind of looked like the Mad Hatter from, the Disney film. And, people weren't busting up, but it made him actually approachable. Like, where'd you get that hat? And so you can surprise people with what you say, what you wear, how you lead a meeting. Um, so, for example, maybe do your meeting in reverse order, or maybe craft a special acronym. Like you could say, we have so many acronyms. Like when I was with this company, I was talking about some of their acronyms, and then I said, "You guys deserve the ultimate acronym." And I literally made A through Z, 26 letter acronym about them, which surprised and delighted them. So what I tell people, John, is, and I have to remind myself, I'm in the comedy business, but sometimes we give out what we also need to receive. So I look for ways
Mm.
to enjoy this myself. But I love this concept of sad. And people are like, what? You want to make people sad? And it stands for surprise and delight. So it might be a gift you buy at the dollar store. Or instead of just giving someone a Starbucks gift card, for example, I'll walk into the audience and I'll say, hey, Mike, you want a Starbucks gift card, and everyone claps. I give them the card and I say, yeah, just load it up with cash and you can use it at any location, you know? And so there's lots of ways to surprise people. I'll give you another example is it's not that surprising when you get a holiday card, though that's wonderful. But what if you sent someone a handwritten card on their half birthday? You go on Amazon and buy these half birthday cards, and that is so strange and wonderful. People are like, "Oh, yeah, my birthday is 6 months from now," and he was thoughtful enough to remember it 6 months ahead of time. They're gonna smile, and they're going to appreciate you, and that's the bottom line. The goal really is not to be seen as the funniest person in the room, but it's to be seen as more human, and, I like to say that humor is a shortcut to trust. So when you're laughing with people, you're just automatically feeling more connected to them.
So, what is I don't know if it's psychology or biology or what is it that makes us be more comfortable around someone when we find humor?
I think it actually goes back to, like, even before I was gonna say it goes back to childhood, even before that,
Mhm.
like, my wife and I have a new grandson. His name is Bryson, and he can't talk yet. He's only a few months old, but he's already laughing. He's already laughing with his mom and his dad, and we're trying to, make faces, whatever, and he's already laughing. So I think it goes so deep in us as human beings, this way of connecting with each other. Now, the quickest way to get a laugh is the power of the unexpected, which goes back to surprise, right? So I'll give you another crazy example. We were sending gifts this week to a client who just booked me for a leadership gathering in Indonesia. And rather than sending a thank you card, which is great, we got these giant bouncy balls that you can get from Walmart, and you take a Sharpie, and I wrote, like, if I did this with you, John, I would say, "Hey, John, thanks for having me on your podcast. I had a ball," right? And you don't put it in a box, you just put postage on it, and the mail carrier literally takes this giant bouncy ball that you can get for like $3 at Walmart. And so you didn't tell a joke, but you made him smile, you made him laugh, and you surprise them. So that's probably the easiest go-to of the humor tactics. But what I encourage your listeners to do is think about what makes you laugh, because chances are what makes you laugh is also your laugh language. So if you're another of the tactics is called wordplay. So
Mhm.
if you're all into like funny quotes and dad jokes or bad puns or rhyming words, chances are, if that makes you laugh, chances are that's your laugh language, and so you might find someone else at the office and do, like, a dad joke competition against them, and as dumb or silly as that sounds, they might talk about that for weeks after your gathering.
Yeah, I work with a guy who in every conversation, he throws in some kind of pun or some kind of a wordplay that's humorous that can take the most tense situation into everybody kind of like, oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
he settles everybody down a little bit. And I don't know if he does it on purpose or if it's just the way who he is, but it always happens. and
And so
it
people probably kinda look forward to it, right? Like, what's he
yeah,
gonna say
yeah,
next?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if somebody else makes that joke, then we kind of, oh, you're acting like so and so over here. We kind
Yeah,
of throw
yeah.
him out
I
there
love
rather
that.
than.
Yeah, so, like, I would go up to him and I go, "Man, you belong in a penitentiary," or something like that. And, sometimes those things get groans, but there are some great comedians. Like, one of my favorite comedians of all time is Stephen Wright. I don't know if you remember that guy. He would have a total deadpan straight face, and he would say the craziest things with his words. Like, he would say, "I put spot remover on my dog, now he's gone." You know? And so you can get clever, and of course, AI can help you. So if you said, "I want 10 puns about computer systems," or whatever, you'll get some groaners, but if you keep asking and digging and take a 4 by 6 or 3 by 5 card and start writing some stuff down. But here's kinda graduate level. I know, I did a little, digging on you, John. I know you study martial arts, right?
Yep.
So there are different degrees, different belts as you progress. As a leader, if you really wanna take humor to the next level, here's what I suggest. Try to identify not just your favorite laugh language, but the people around you. Like you just mentioned this associate who's into wordplay. And then you might notice, oh, she's a big storyteller. That laugh language is called Amplify. And so I would have that storyteller like, hey, can you put a fun 5-minute wrap, turn this into a story, recap our meeting? Then I'd have the punster, give us like the worst dad joke about getting a raise or whatever. And so now you've involved 4 or 5 people and tapping into their sense of humor, because even more than making other people laugh, when someone laughs at your humor, it just feels so great.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And you mentioned AI, and I have to say, last year I did something very similar to that, where I took, I asked ChatGPT to give me, IT jokes as if Mitch Hedberg was making them. Yeah, so just
Oh,
like little one-liners. so,
yeah, that's
so I
great.
could do that at the Christmas party last year, and just kind of went
Yeah,
through some of them,
yeah.
which got some laughs. I'd be very clear. I didn't make these up, nor did Mitch Hedberg because he's not around.
Right.
But
Sometimes I'll be, emceeing an event, and it might be like a Fortune 1000 company.
Mhm.
And so if I get in my head, I go, okay, I've got to do all this sophisticated material about finance or banking. But the truth is, it doesn't have to be super sophisticated. Like sometimes I'll hand out 4 index cards, and each one has like the worst dad joke of all time. Then I'll go back to the sound AV person. I'll say, hey, give me that rim shot, but on bump. And so I'll have 4 different dads in the audience read the joke. And then I give a silly prize to you know, the the guy who gets the biggest laugh, and that might take 5, 7 minutes, but now people are laughing together. I don't think it's a coincidence that that we call them dad jokes. We don't call them, like, weird uncle jokes. There's
Mhm.
something about that kinda humor that just says, "Hey, it's safe, it's fun, and we can all laugh together." That's another thing I really talk about in the book is making a shift from laughing at people to laughing with them. As leaders, you want your humor to make everybody feel included. And so, raunchy comedy is probably always going to be popular, but it's not appropriate in a corporate setting. So I tell my readers, if in doubt, leave it out. If you think it's going to offend someone because of politics, or if it even comes anywhere near prejudice, just skip it. Don't do it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I've had to, unfortunately, discipline people for telling jokes that were inappropriate in the workplace in the past too. So yeah, absolutely. When in doubt, leave it out for sure. I like what you said about dad jokes and feeling safe, because I do think there is something there when someone tells kind of a corny joke or something like that, and people, they don't feel offended or afraid. They feel like, oh, this is a comfortable place. Even if it's not like laugh out loud funny, it's still like, oh, someone's trying. At least they're making an effort.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you another one of my favorite of the 5 humor tactics. I call it in jokes. In jokes. And I don't know what it is. I haven't fully figured out why this is so, but when you create a shared experience with your team, so like let's say you went on some kind of office scavenger hunt or something. That's not doing a comedy routine, but what happens is you're creating, stories and shared memories where a year later people go, "Remember when we were trying to find, whatever, the butter in the office," or whatever the game is. And it doesn't have to be a game, but my point is in humor, like, I'm looking at you through Zoom right now, and I see your red brick wall background. So if I were to riff on that, and then later if I were to say, "Hey, I got you a gift," and it was like a fake facade of red bricks, well, to your listeners, that probably wouldn't be funny, but to you and I, because we've had this shared experience, now we've created like an inside joke together.
Yeah, so I've actually had a call several months ago, and somebody commented about the brick wall, and they said, "Oh, it looks like you're in prison." And and then like several months go by, I jump on the call again. I still got the brick wall behind me. He's like, "Still in jail, huh?" It's like,
There you go,
and
exactly.
no one else laughs but me and him do.
But I'll tell you an interesting story about brick walls. One of the most important, comedy clubs in America, not too many people have heard about it if they're not in the comedy scene, but it's in LA, in Pasadena, California, not far from where they do the Rose Bowl, and it's called the Ice House.
Yeah.
They were one of the first to have a red brick wall, and the reason is originally it was an iced house where they stored ice in there, and the reason it worked so well is the acoustics were so good that the laughter would, like, bounce off the walls. I one time saw a comedian there, and I was laughing so hard I was, like, crying, I could hardly breathe. Then I saw the same comedian a week later, and it just wasn't as funny. I'm thinking, this is the same jokes. And it was because of the room. We were in the ice house. And so another tip I have for leaders is you want to gather people closer together.
Mm.
So even if you're in a like let's say you're in some kind of a meeting room that could accommodate say 100 people, but you only have 10 people, get them in close. Don't have people all spread out because laughter is it's contagious. It bounces off of our bodies, like, literally, in our hearts, and so there's even a thing called, laughter yoga. I don't know if you heard about this.
Yeah.
I plan to try this in 2026. I've never tried this. You get together with people, and there's no comedian, but someone starts to laugh, and for, like, the next 30 minutes, everybody's laughing. There's not even a joke. There's not even, like, a video. But there's something about us laughing together that is just it's just magical, and it feels good. It almost feels like, yeah, you let off a lot of stress, like you had a good cry, but you really just had a good laugh together.
Yeah, I'll see my wife sometimes. She'll be sitting on the couch on her phone, and she'll see a video and start laughing, and then I'll start laughing like, "Oh, what is it? What is it?" You know, and I'm already excited and like laughing, even though I have no idea what she's laughing at. Yeah.
Recently, when I was in Indonesia, there were attendees there from, Europe, US, Canada, Asia, of course, and yet we were all laughing together, and so it was like it crosses language boundaries. You could be the top leader, you could be an intern, you could be somewhere in the middle, but when you're laughing together, now you're not strangers, you know? So,
Mhm.
I've had some tough situations. One time I was hired to, entertain and motivate about I think it was about 600 people in the medical arena, and a big section of them were doctors, but some of them were, like, in a union, and they were upset with some of the leadership, and I thought, "Man, how am I gonna get them all laughing together?" So what I did was they were all sitting in their own sections, like, if you go to church, people kinda sit in the same place every Sunday.
Mhm.
That was happening here, and then so I had them stand up and mix and sit in different places, and it kinda broke the barriers down, and that's maybe the number one, thing I hope people get from my book, The Laughter Factor, is that laughter's a bridge. You know, Mother Teresa, who was not a comedian, she knew a lot about humanity. She said, "A smile is the shortest distance between two people." And so another trick is it's never a good idea to laugh at your own jokes. You wanna wait and let the audience laugh. But if you open a meeting where you're smiling, even if you don't feel like it, 2 things happen. 1, pretty soon you feel like it because it changes you. But next, it's almost like a yawn that starts catching and people start smiling. And so I think the goal is to raise the energy and the connection in whatever room you're in, even if it's a Zoom room.
I think it's a good idea. What are your thoughts on like opening a meeting with a joke? Like,
Well, it
it depends.
depends on the person for one, but here's a really big tip. They say the difference between a comedian who's a pro and an amateur is a pro will do the same jokes for new audiences. An amateur is always doing new material for the same old audience. And there's no right or wrong, but here's the point. Practice your jokes. So if you have an important meeting, like let's say you have a quarterly meeting and it's important, don't try out the joke there for the first time. Try it out at your Rotary Club. Try it out, at the church potluck. Try it out on your family, and so you feel comfortable with it, so you can relax with it. You don't wanna be in your head. You wanna relax and tell it like a story. And one other tip on telling jokes is don't step on your punchline. Oh, I see this happen so often, right? The joke I just shared, the Stephen Wright one, if he had said, "I put spot remover on my dog, now he's gone, ha ha," and he started laughing, he stepped on the punchline. So you wanna it's a little scary because you don't know if they're gonna laugh, but the longer you pause and just wait, the bigger laugh you'll get.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So, I think we've hit on all 5 tactics: surprise, poke, in joke, wordplay, and amplify. What other tips or tricks do you have for leaders that are out there that are trying to be better communicators when it comes to their team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a formula, I'll just simplify it. As leaders, our temptation is we wanna look smart, we wanna look like we have it all together, but I would say this, go for transformation over information. So
Mm.
Let me explain that for a moment. Start with the pain before you get into the prescription. I see too many speakers. I literally have introduced hundreds of speakers, pro keynote speakers, New York Times bestselling authors, and managers, and everything in between. And what I see happening is we're so anxious to show off our knowledge, but your listeners are sitting back going, why should I care?
Mm.
Why does this matter to me? Right. So if I went to see the doctor and he goes, hey, Adam, I've got great news. I can amputate your arm. I'd be like, what? But if there'd been some diagnosis like my arm's full of cancer, then that might be good news. So start with the pain. In fact, even aggravate the pain, then deliver your prescription. Another tip for effective speaking is you just have to assume people are not paying attention. You have to continually hook them. Some people, like, let's say you had a 40-minute talk to give. Some people think, well, I'll tell a 2-minute joke and then I own them. Well, no, you don't. Maybe you own them for 2, 3 minutes, but you need to keep adding a story, a startling statistic, a moment of audience participation. So if I'm in a ballroom and there are a couple hundred people and I sense maybe it's after lunch, the energy is low, I'll have everybody stand, do some crazy fist bump thing and just get the energy back up. I might give out some silly gifts. And so you have to think about all the, what do they call it online, like clickbait, right?
Yeah.
Your talk needs to almost have like talk bait where you just keep hooking along the way. And so my favorite quotation on this topic is Mark Twain, maybe the greatest humorist in American history. He said, it takes me 3 weeks to prepare a good impromptu speech. So what you want is planned spontaneity. You want to think ahead and say, okay, this part of my talk gets a little dry, so I'm going to plan for a moment of interaction. I'm going to give something away. I'm going to and here's another mistake to avoid. I know I'm kind of rambling here, John. This is one of my favorite topics is more effective communications.
Mhm.
Here's what you don't want to do. At the end of your talk, you don't want to go, any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Because, right? But one shift on that might be, what questions do you have? Just a simple shift that way. And here's another little secret is you can plant a couple of questions ahead of time. You can go up and, hey, Terry, I've written this out on a 3x5 card. And in case there are no questions, could you ask me this? There's no shame in that. You're responsible as the communicator to get your message across. So combine humor, storytelling, and lots of attention grabbing.
Yeah, I think the worst thing I ever see when I go to conferences is like a speaker that's not that well seasoned, and they get up there and they play on this like, you know, long Q&A at the end, and it's not there, and they just ask you to,
Right.
can I take, I want to spend the next 15 minutes taking questions, and no one has any. It's just silence, and it's so awkward. I
Oh,
feel so bad for
hurts.
them, and oh,
And then the way they end it usually is like, well, that's my time or my time's up. You don't want to say that. You don't want to reference, let's say you're doing a bigger event. You don't want to reference the time, the lights in your eyes. You don't want to wear one of those shiny name badges like a lanyard on stage. You want to think. Another favorite saying that I love is the meaning of communication is the response you get. So as you're coming up with your talk, think about what is the response I want? I want them to take this action. I want them to buy this product and then reverse engineer it. So when I'm doing a Q&A, for example, I still have an ending after the Q&A. It might be a couple of sentences, it might be a story, but I don't want it to end. Like you said, if someone asks for questions and there aren't any, you don't want to end there. You want to still have like a capper.
yeah, absolutely. I think you always have to have that good finishing piece. And I think, meetings that you have within your team had to have the same thing. You have to put in the time and the effort to come up with what is the outline going to be, and how are you going to close this out in a way that leaves people remembering it, so it doesn't just come off as another meeting that they probably didn't want to be at anyway.
And this is where, I've led several businesses, and years ago I was a youth minister. And so I led groups like that, and I've hosted hundreds of events. There's a lot of pressure to kind of feel like you need to look really smart.
Mhm.
But here's another thing I've learned, John, is that we feel before we think.
Mm.
So our temptation is to try to impress people with our knowledge of the facts, the statistics, and all that. And that can be helpful. But in the end, it's how you made them feel. Did you make them feel confident in your material and you? Did you lift them up? Did you make them feel celebrated? And it doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert. It doesn't mean you have to be like, a DJ or whatever. But it does mean you need to think about not just what you want them to know, but how do you want them to feel? So ask yourself, what is the response I want from them that benefits them?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question to kind of ask and make sure you have that wrapped up in your talk, for sure.
Yeah. And then when it comes to humor, be intentional about it. Like one time years ago, I was on a flight with Jay Leno. It was a total coincidence. I think he was performing at Little Caesars, but I'm sitting next to Jay and I go, "Hey Jay, give me some tips. You host the Tonight Show." And he said LPMs. And I said, "Jay, what is that?" And he said, laughs per minute. So, as a professional comedian, you want to cram as many laughs per minute into your set. Well, as a leader, you want to cram as many, I would call almost like, I would say light per minute, meaning they have an aha moment or they have a light moment of laughter or the light goes on. So, nobody's sitting around going, "Hey, dump a bunch of information on me."
Yeah, and of course, Jay Leno would have the LPM, the RPM. He's a car guy.
Right. That's right.
Yeah,
That's it.
of
Yeah.
course.
Sure.
Adam, this has been a great conversation. And how can people, if they want to learn more about being a better communicator and giving better speeches and better talks, and that is one of the things I want to, before we get to that point, one of the things I definitely want to encourage our listeners out there to do is if you have an opportunity to speak at a conference, do it. Even if you don't think you'll be good at it, just do it. I'll never forget, like years ago, I always wanted to go to conferences to learn, but the company I worked for didn't send people to conferences. They wouldn't pay for it at all.
Mhm.
And I discovered that if you speak at the conference, you apply to speak. Usually they'll let you come for free. Sometimes they'll even pay you to come. So I started doing that and I was a terrible communicator. I was a terrible speaker for a long time. But you learn over time and you get better at it. And the more you practice, the better you are. And you can take those skills into leading your teams and to communicating in budget meetings or wherever you have to do. And I just want to encourage our listeners to make sure they do that if they get the chance.
That is such a great point. Like for me, when I hear the term a geek leader, I'm thinking, well, that's not me because I'm not used to that. And when someone hears me talking about comedy, they might think, well, that's not me. But it's practice. It's getting in front over and over. And I will say, some studies have shown that after the fear of death, I think the fear of speaking in public might be the second biggest fear that Americans have. And here's what I tell people is when you feel that nervousness, reframe that in your mind. It's adrenaline. It literally is adrenaline. And so what happens when someone's in a big NBA finals or they're in a big race or whatever, they get this adrenaline rush that empowers them. So when you're feeling that, I told the one client, I said, when you feel the butterflies in your stomach, just get them to fly in formation. Know that that's your body's way of empowering you to just rock it and then slow down. Sometimes we get nervous and we go really fast.
Yeah.
Let it breathe. But to your question about resources, if your listeners go to thelaughterfactor.com, there's something really fun waiting for them. They can take a quiz in 4 minutes and discover their laugh language. So it'll ask you some questions and it'll let you know, you know what, you gravitate toward Amplify, you're a storyteller, or no, you're a punster, wordplay is your laugh language. And once you know your laugh language, then you can cultivate that. So if Amplify is your laugh language, you can go, okay, I'm going to master a really funny story about when I went to camp and we toilet papered, the other campers or whatever the story is. And if you turns out that your in jokes is your laugh language, then you might be someone who's like, okay, we're going to cultivate some fun stuff at our next gathering that's going to get everybody feeling like, oh, we had an awesome experience together. So be intentional about it. And if you go to thelaughterfactor.com, you can also find that the book is available there.
Awesome. And I'll link that too in the show notes at geekleader.com so people can go there and click through. Adam, this has been a fun conversation. I really appreciate having you on. And I feel like I've learned a lot. I'm sure our audience did too.
Hey, thanks, John, and good luck getting out of prison.
Yeah, thanks.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to. Click on their links and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.